Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Night with County Executive Pittman, Women in Charge. Tonight's guests will be honored as a part of Women's History Month. This evening will be special as we will highlight some of our women in government who lead our public safety departments. And thanks to Mr. County Executive Pittman, I will be facilitating our discussion tonight. I am Kay Augusta Brown, the Chief of Staff in the County Executive's Office, and I'm very honored to be able to facilitate our chat tonight. Women's History Month. In 1987, the National Women's History Project petitioned Congress to pass legislation designating March as Women's History Month. This was followed by additional legislation allowing the president to proclaim an annual Women's History Month in March. Women's History Month is a moment in the year to intentionally study the struggles, accomplishments, and contributions women have made and continue to make in the United States. It is a time for women's history to take its rightful place. It is the opportunity to hear her story and to share these with other women, girls, men, and boys so they can develop a sense of self and see all that women have been, are, and can be. For tonight's chat, I will highlight our living history. 3 women whom I respect and admire, who work tirelessly to keep our community safe. They are groundbreakers in public safety, serving as the first women to lead their respective departments in Anne Arundel County. I cannot wait to hear more about their experiences and their inspirational stories. So let me get to it and introduce these 3 incredible women. Preeti Emmerich is our Director of Emergency Management. She joined the Office of Emergency Management in January 2020 as the department's deputy director and was later appointed as the director in May 2020. She previously was in Anne Arundel County as a planner in the office in 2014. Her expertise includes emergency management operations, training, planning, and health areas. She served at the state and local emergency management and public health agencies, as well as private sector facilitating and directing emergency responses in both planned and active incidents. Preeti completed her bachelor's at the University of Michigan and her law degree at American University of Washington College of Law. Next is Trisha Wolfer. She was appointed as the fire chief in January 2019. She oversees one of the largest combination fire departments in the country. Chief Wolford is responsible for 981 career firefighters, approximately 600 operational volunteer firefighters, 28 fire communications operators, and 56 civilian support staff. Chief Wolford's experience includes being a firefighter and paramedic. She was assigned to the Fire and Explosives Investigation Unit. She has provided medical attention to the Anne Arundel County Police SWAT team. She has served as the Deputy Chief, Fire Chief and Fire Marshal with the Bozeman Fire Department in Bozeman, Montana. And with a little more travel, she was in Spokane Fire Department as the Assistant Fire Chief. She holds a master's degree in management and organizational leadership and is currently enrolled in an MBA program with expected graduation in 2021. Amal Awad was appointed as Chief of Police last December. She was with Anne Arundel County earlier in her career as the Chief of Staff, and she leads a department of 778 authorized sworn officers and 240 professional staff. She began her career in public safety with Prince George's County Police Department in 1990 and served as a law enforcement officer until her retirement. She has worked for the City of Hyattsville Police Department as the Deputy Chief of Police and then was appointed as Chief of Police in December 2018. Amal graduated with honors from Johns Hopkins University and earned her master's degree of science in management. Wow. Those are some incredible ladies there with some incredible experience. I am so excited to have you all here. Welcome. So what we're going to do today is we're just going to do round robin questions that I've prepared for you today, just so we can get to see a little bit different side of you than your work side, and let our community get to know you a little bit, and then celebrate the work that you've done. So why don't you all tell us about your role and how you got there? Whomever wants to start, this is a conversation.
I am showing deference, and I am going to ask Chief Wolfer to go first since she is the first appointment on this administration as a woman.
Excellent. Great idea.
Very good idea. I will take the first question. And so how did we get here, right? That's what it is. I think everybody on this screen, including our host, Dr. K, obviously well accomplished and fitting that the four of us are here together. You get to these positions because you have a thought, you have a glimmer, you see something that intrigues you about the profession, whether it's your family, it's seeing it happen and going, I want to do that. But at the end of the day, just reading through the bios, it's hard work, right? It's a lot of time of this. It's a lot of time of sitting at the desk, getting the degrees, putting in the hard work to learn, putting in the hard work then in the physical aspect. There's obviously a huge physical component to the police and fire department, and really just having that drive. I mean, I know a lot of people use the word grit when it comes down to it, but there are some gritty components to public safety. In the OEM world, it's nonstop, weather, natural disasters, human disasters, right? There is no relief from the things you could possibly doing. So for me, part of it just came from the drive of seeing my family in the fire service. None of them were women, but seeing others do it and nobody ever telling me I couldn't do it. If that's what you wanted to do, then my parents told me, well, you work hard and you make sure you're good at it and you do the best you possibly can. So I think that's really how I ended up here. You just kind of get bitten by the bug and it lives somewhere deep in your soul.
Excellent. And that's true. You guys, Chief Amal or Preeti, would you like to add on to that?
So actually in my position, it was by accident. Once I graduated from law school, I took this position of policy in Homeland Security and ended up working for DC Homeland Security. And I really fell in love with emergency management. As Chief Wolfer said, it's very exciting, constantly something happening, and it's never boring. And so that's what I really enjoyed about the field, the operational aspect, as well as the planning and the policy. And one of the things you said, Chief Wolfer, is so true. It is the grit, it is the choice to move forward and to take that position, even higher position, and work harder. And definitely in my career, I had my eye on the prize doing that. And every career choice kind of led to where I am now. And I'm very happy to be back in Arundel after I worked here as a planner.
Excellent. And we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I echo their sentiments. It didn't start in childhood. As a young child, I want to be a police officer. For me, it came from the neighborhood I grew up in. And just some of my life's experiences. And I truly wanted to get into a service-oriented position to help folks. I know that I'm the only law enforcement officer in my family, in the history of my family that I know of. And, just being inspired to help others. We're all called in service in each of our respective roles. And it truly, in my humble opinion, takes a special person to commit so much of themselves in service to others. This is not a light profession. It's challenging. It takes you away from family for great lengths of time. However, you are pushed and challenged beyond probably what you believe you're capable of accomplishing in some moments. And, it's very rewarding in many regards, and it's tough. It's not an easy profession for any of us, and I know that. And the one thing I've learned from these amazing ladies is to take care of self, right? Mm-hmm. To remember to exercise and manage your wellness. I may be a difficult student. But I'm going to begin following their wisdom and their good judgment when it comes to exactly that. So I'm humbled to be amongst these two ladies. And obviously, as the newest employee, I looked at the county and I looked at the diverse group of employees that hold higher level positions here. And, I was not only enamored and impressed, but, I was eager to become a part of this. And I think, we have an amazing future. And I just look forward to your leadership, ladies.
I'm sure the feeling is mutual for all of us. It's a great team. I mean, if you just look at the screen, it's a great team of, one, professionals working together, but then two, to have the relatability of being women in industries that are predominantly male, where we all greatly respect the men that work hard and serve and have been our mentors and have helped pave the road. It is always neat to see, what happens when you rise to the top and the gratitude of putting in the hard work and continuing to serve it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think for ladies, I'm sorry, Dr.
No, go ahead. No,
but I think for ladies in leadership, we're fully aware enough of the time we're the first. Mm-hmm. And, it's incumbent upon us. We're setting the pace. And, you may not even realize it. We may not have realized it initially, but setting the pace and kind of laying the foundation for inspiration for others coming up through the ranks in our profession, or those who are even curious about, what we do, and they can see themselves not necessarily in our positions, but just positions in leadership. And I think, that's great for the ladies out there.
And I think it's also great. That's what I draw the inspiration from, is the younger members of my staff, who I can see in the next 10 to 20 years sitting in my chair leading the agencies. And it's a great feeling to have.
Yeah. The impact that we have on younger people, we hope is going to be, groundbreaking in of itself to encourage them to move forward because they've seen other people in positions of leadership. So I know that I shared the questions with you in advance, but as we were talking, I thought of a question. So I'm going to throw a different one at you. And Preeti, if you would maybe get us started on it.
Sure.
The past year of our lives has been probably very different, not just because we're in different positions, but because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And each of you touched on, the huge responsibility and the time away from family, the dedication, the grit, all of that. But sometimes I think people may not really recognize just how different the last year was for us in terms of the work that we put in. Do you want to maybe talk a little bit about that? And then Chiefs, you can follow up with, how that was different and how did you balance, family? Because I find that I struggled with it and continue to struggle with it because, 15-hour days on a regular without a break is not probably natural. So Preeti, get us started.
Sure. This is an unprecedented event, I think, in any of our professions, especially emergency management. Emergency management can deal with one incident at a time while nobody else is affected. And here, everybody's affected. So the resources and everything it was tough to deal with, and especially making sure that the communities were taken care of, right? So that's the number one thing. I would not be here without the great support of my family and my friends who I can talk to. You talk about balancing life. I talk to my kids all the time about what's happening, why this is important. This is why I have to be on the phone in meetings all the time, is to help the people. Mm-hmm. And I think that has really opened their eyes to understanding what's happening. But you're right, it is tough. And I always, and Chief really touched it for me. We will get through this. Mm-hmm. And I always tell people, I know it's difficult in these times, but always number one, take care of your family, take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. Because this too, we will get through this And it's important that you yourself get through this with the help of whatever support network that you have. And I'm hoping that after this, we take a lot of lessons learned and how we can better ourselves, but also better our professions. I know in emergency management, there's a lot of talk on how we could do things differently in terms of our operations and in terms of how to reach our communities. Mm-hmm. And out of this very difficult time, I think we definitely have a better future.
Excellent. I like that something positive is coming out of this.
I'll just add in, one or two things about the year. And I would say it's probably true for any leader. But if you look at women in leadership roles, especially women in leadership roles that have young children, have many children, I have been just fascinated at what they're capable of doing. I mean, to me, if you talk about that superpower, that's it. Balancing a high level leadership role, the Dr. K, like you're talking about, when you work from home right now, there is no end to the day. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the expectation is that you can be on a Zoom meeting at 9:00 at night, because why not?
Right.
And recreating those boundaries and that balance, and then having to do, homeschools and, virtual learning and all that. I mean, kudos to the women that have been able to balance that. Preeti talked about family and that support network. Mm-hmm. And if you've not learned how to balance that and how to lean on that when you need to, it is time, right? It is crucial that you balance the role. If you are not a full human yourself and, a confident, strong woman and leading the departments you need to lead, you will never be capable of serving the community to its fullest. Mm-hmm. And we all feel very dedicated. My family was great about having, I had to set expectations almost in a work role, even though it was a home life role, to say, I need some flexibility. I need some understanding and patience. I will be on meetings late. When COVID first started, the rapid pace of policy change and speaking to the community and the membership, and it does take time. I mean, none of us signed up for this position thinking we were going to work 8 to 5. That's just not the reality. But we also know you have to keep that fine balance. So, and it's still a conversation, right? We're not out of the woods yet, and everybody's tired, including all of us. There's no way anybody working in a community serving county government isn't tired at this point. And it goes back to what the police chief said. Finding a way for that exercise, for that extra hour of sleep, for that Sunday with nothing on the agenda where you can cuddle up on the couch with a blanket and feel okay about it. Right. That's the hard part as women, is I don't think we give ourselves enough of a break mentally to feel okay. It's okay. We didn't just waste 24 hours. That was our best invested 24 hours on the couch with old movies and your kids. Yeah, there's the investment piece. So
no, you're absolutely right. That's great.
And early on, at the onset of the pandemic, as leaders, as a community, we were all bracing for the unknowns. There were a lot of things we did not know. And, as leaders, we had to make sure that we gave direction for what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. Do we have appropriate equipment? And then appropriating that equipment, and not necessarily for, especially for work, but we were all concerned for our families, early on, because the supplies were limited. It was pretty scarce and pretty frightening, just because we just did not know. There were just too many unknowns. And, my hat's off to all of the ladies, all of the leaders, everyone actually who continue to get up every day, not knowing, how this thing would impact or affect them medically, but continue to show up every day for work. Especially the essential medical personnel and fire and EMS and military and anyone else who had to get up and every day get to work, but also be concerned about, your family, and just being able to balance that and continue to motivate and inspire your staff to show up every day, and why it was important, that we be present. The community needs us now more than ever in the midst of all these unknowns. So, it certainly has pushed us to be more creative with how to communicate, but I know we're all looking forward to in-person engagement. And although this is a great tool, I don't plan to use it too much post-pandemic, if there is such a thing. I'm looking forward to, engaging folks in person. There's nothing like it. And if we can walk away with anything, it's the value of just being able to connect with one another in person. Just those relationships are so important.
You're absolutely right. I think that for me, the pandemic really, the difficulty in not knowing what we were dealing with and having needs change like within minutes, and working with those unknowns and the stress, really, it was difficult, but it also positioned me in a way to really be able to say, here's some needs. How can we serve the needs that we're seeing? And I feel like we did some really creative work in the health and human services side. And I know in the public safety side, you guys have done the same. So I really kind of want you to talk a little bit about, what project or initiative you're most proud of in the county and how it's driving positive change in our communities.
So I'll go first.
Okay.
And this is a county initiative, just especially at the onset of this thing, and just recognizing that folks were losing their employment, folks were losing housing, folks were in need of food. And so just watching communities come together to bring in food resources to help offset that what was lacking in a household, the gift card giveaways, just everyone coming together to make sure their neighbor had versus just looking out for oneself. We saw a lot of us come together to help one another. And again, that's another positive thing that's come from this. Obviously the way we engage community changed, right? But just seeing the department still move forward, I have to, really give Tamika Perkins, her just due, because in the midst of all of this, she was still developing programming for our young people, and watching her stand these programs up, our youth, Minority Youth Advisory Council, our Fresh Start program, pre-arrest diversion, where we're getting young people resources and help, if they commit a low-level offense, rather than placing them under arrest, we're directing them to resources and really helping them, which is what we really sign up to do, right? We're service workers. Mm-hmm. We're here to help folks. And so, I'm proud of standing up those programs, and I'm looking forward to where we are, where we end in the future with those programs, particularly where it affects our young people.
I want to echo Chief Awa's sentiment about the community. The community engagement has been spectacular. When the Office of Emergency Management, especially for some of the health and human services programs, called for volunteers, we got volunteers who often put themselves at risk. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is how the community was brought together, especially through our community emergency response teams, who have been so helpful in extending our services to Anne Arundel County. But the thing I'm really most proud of is how the outreach into the community. Dr. K, I don't know if you remember in the early days, those phone banks.
Yes.
Where concerned citizens would call in.
Yes.
And it was heartbreaking to hear some of the stories, mm-hmm. but to be able to help them was great. And I know a lot of the programs came from that, and being able to help those residents was something that I know OEM was extremely proud of, and something that even continues to this day with our other agencies, public safety and health and human services, making sure those community needs are met.
I just want to, before you go, Chief Wolfer, I want to just kind of circle back and say, one of the things that I think really stands out to me as you all talk is that not only did our departments come together and do work in a way that they have never done before, and worked with each other, did jobs that they've never done before, and then the other departments who maybe were not necessarily as involved in COVID were would raise their hand and say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll help.
Mhm.
You need help, just let me know. And so I really think that that's incredible. And I think it really, follows what you're describing here in terms of engagement, not only with our community, but our staff as well.
Right.
And if I may just piggyback off of that, Chief Wolfer, thank you. I called you in distress after my first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. I had a bit of a reaction, and you were very helpful. Thank you. But you and your team, you took care of us. Like, we took care of one another. But you made sure that all first responders, everyone who was in that 1A, 1B category, were taken care of, because it's critical for us to be able to show up to work healthy. And you guys did that seamlessly. And I want to publicly say thank you.
Thank you. That's a fantastic team down there, led by our newest deputy chief, Lisa Mayers, who was just promoted into a deputy chief position. And we talked about the just the ability to continue to serve and to be needed and relevant in the community is one thing on its own. But to do something that has that much emotion with it, and you could feel, the room had electricity to it. You could feel relief and excitement and sometimes nerves. But public safety would come in and get vaccinated. And there, for some people, almost tears in their eyes, because you could see they felt relief. And when we would say, are you okay? Thinking medically, or maybe they're scared, they said, no, this is my first step closer to being able to see my grandma, who I haven't seen in 9 months, right? So to be, such an honor to be a part of that puzzle piece that starts reconnecting people. And we talked about our ability in the fire service, for the whole year. Not only do we continue to do emergent medicine, right? We're responding on calls, but this ability to connect with the community in their worst moments. And one of the things when I got here, I wanted our firehouses to feel more integrated in the community. And so we set up all types of ways for them to connect with neighborhood associations and HOAs, and to know the meeting schedules and scripts. And so they could just show up and say, hey, we're the firefighters, right? We're not just this empty building down here. This is who we are. We might not be able to stay for the meeting. We might have to run out on a call. But the better they know their communities, the better they know their needs, and the better they can serve. And so we talked about connecting. Now, when you get into COVID, we didn't really have those avenues, but it was interesting to see, because so much time was being spent with patients because of new protocols in place by the hospitals, the time they were on scene to get fully, PPE'd up and make sure they have everything on. And then we got into this position where, unfortunately, we can't bring family members with us, right? These separations of who goes to the hospital, who stays, the compassion, the empathy that they learned, the relatability of, holding phones so patients can FaceTime with loved ones at home while they're waiting for a hospital bed. Those pieces, those emotional pieces, and those emotional experiences, those live with you and make you better providers. It makes paramedics stronger. It makes our EMTs understand why we're doing some of the crucial medical things we do. It makes firefighters realize the component of why we're both, why you're a firefighter and an EMT, why you're not just one, and how we can serve better. So being able to connect in the community happened in a whole different way. But it led to that empathy and compassion piece that hopefully, like Preeti says, we can find a way to find good pieces out of it. When the intent really started with, let's go to meetings and make sure people know who we are and talk to them and say hello. And instead you get this really deep rooted emotional connection to the people that you serve.
I think that's a really, really great point. And I think that we saw that across the board, that, policy changed. We had to set policy. We had to have, practices. But you can't set policy to say, what, let me help you FaceTime while you're waiting for a service. Like that's incredible. And I think that our staff and community members across the board stepped up and did those kinds of things. So it's really super. We do have a comment from Rodell that says, I commend each leader for the fantastic job you're doing in Anne Arundel County. The CN community is strong and vibrant under your leadership. So
Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you.
yes. Let's move on to this next question. We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. So, who has influenced your career in a significant way?
I can. Oh, go ahead.
I knew it was going to happen. I knew that.
I always point to my mother. I'm grateful I had my mom. She supported me in my decision to become a police officer. Obviously, she was worried, but at every promotion, she was there and always encouraging me to do what was next, right? And she was very, very much a part of why I continue to, aspire for more. And then we've talked about, the lack of women, especially for us, present in these leadership roles as we came up through the ranks. And most of our mentors have been men. And we're very grateful for them taking active interest in our career track, our career paths. But, as we ascended, you see some peers, and I can speak to Anne Arundel County the first time I was here. Someone who I admired and looked up to as a leader on the department was Pam Davis. At some point, she was not just the deputy chief, but she served as the interim chief. And now she's the chief of police down in Punta Gorda, Florida. But she was a phenomenal leader. And, I thanked her once I was appointed for leading the path to the seat I enjoy today. So, my hat's off to Pam. And I will say this, we're still new and getting to know one another, but I'm inspired by you and your leadership too, ladies. I'm proud to serve alongside you. And I'm looking forward to what I can learn from you as well.
I will definitely echo, my parents have been instrumental, never saying I can't do anything, always encouraging me, always proud of me, always, they're probably watching this right now. So it's heartening to see that they're so excited. And again, as Chief Awa said, the mentors I've had, not necessarily been women, but men who have recognized the need, right, and encouraged diversity in the field, which I think is really important to have those allies. What I had mentioned earlier is the younger generation inspiring me to move forward and to set that good example.
Right, that's great.
So I'll say, obviously, there is something infectious about even you get on this call and even just hearing your bios, and I'm going, ooh, that sounds fancy. Ooh, right? Like, ooh, she sounds important. And we all are, and it's really interesting how we've all gotten to that point. But that in itself is somewhat motivating and inspirational because you do want to be good, right? Nobody wants to say, oh, well, I'll do that later. I mean, not if you're in these positions, you never say, I'll do that later. You say, I'll do that now. So I think there is that piece. And same, almost even men and women that have helped lead and push sometimes for different reasons. I'll say two things. So one, my husband has been a huge advocate. He came out of the fire service, and when I entered into the fire service, he said, you should take that class. I said, I don't need that class. I've been on the job 6 months. I'm good. You should take that class. I'm good. I'll wait. And push him. I'll take the class, right? I'll take the class. And so here, all of this pays off because you're ready sooner, right? I always talk about being ready to say yes. That means internally, and that means on the piece of paper. Always be ready to say yes. And I can remember going back to, I was 16 and I told my mom, I said, Mom, I want to be a lifeguard this summer. I want to be outside. I don't want to work inside. And she said, okay. And I come home and I tell her, I said, I got to do this swim test and I'm going to be a lifeguard. And she said, do you know how to swim? Like that kind of swim, right? I know you know how to like save yourself kind of swim, but we're talking like full swimming here. You got to do all these laps. And I said, I'll figure it out. And she goes, okay, right? She gave me that look like, okay, we'll see, young lady. And I said, Mom, I want to be a lifeguard. And she said, if you can swim, you can be a lifeguard. And of course I come back, I got the job, I passed the test. She goes, I can't believe it. I didn't even know you knew how to swim like that. So those little pieces that still stick with you, but in my head, I'm gonna be a lifeguard. I told you I'm gonna be a lifeguard. I'm gonna be a lifeguard.
I love that.
That's where it all starts, right? Somebody tells you, she didn't tell me no. She said, you just got to do the work. And that's what it is. You got to do the work.
Yes, I definitely can share those same experiences and being told, anything you set your mind to, you can do. And I'm being like, no, I can't do that. And why would I want to do that? So,
you just have to know, even though you know you can do those things, you will make sacrifices, right?
Yes.
When they say you can have it all, well, you can, but you have to prioritize. You can't have it all in the same moment. And once you know that you're capable of doing it all. Maybe not all at the same time, but
I will.
Yeah, that is so
true. It is true, and I will say that I worked full time and went to school at the same time, and my nieces and nephews tease me, and they always tell each other, we don't want to be in school as long as Auntie Kay was in school.
Right.
So yeah, there are definitely priorities that you have to make and choices. So tell me a little bit about where do you go to, get support, because these jobs can be very, very difficult. It can be very isolating. As chief, as director, as chief of staff, you don't always have someone to go and talk to, and you're like, oh my goodness, is this real? Or, I just don't know what to do, or I'm so excited about something, right? Sometimes they're really great things. So who are your go-to people for support, mentorship?
I'll take that one. I'll start. The women on this screen, along with other women, right? We call and we say, you got a minute, and then we let it fly, right? Because that's what everybody does, and it's safe, right? So what are your safe places? I am very, very blessed to have two neighboring female fire chiefs for Baltimore County and Prince George's County who lead large metro departments, just like Anne Arundel County. And the interesting thing is when we all got appointed within 6 months, 8 months of each other, none of us knew each other. And you start one text message and you put the next one on as they're promoted, and you are instant best friends because you have to have that safe place. I mean, we know we can all go to family, but at the same time, there's this balance of, I don't want my family to always be my dumping ground. I want my family to enjoy the job as much as I enjoy and adore every piece of it, without them feeling like, gosh, I just get to hear the bad stuff. And sometimes if they're not in our worlds of public safety, it's really hard to understand, when you talk about what you go through in a day in law enforcement and what you go through a day of, paperwork and OEM and forms to fill out. And sometimes it's just really hard to relate. So finding those safe people in your profession and making sure that you're not burdening someone else while at the same time trying to debrief yourself. I will say exercise, yoga, and a good night's sleep goes a long way too.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Amen. And that's the same support system I use. There's not people in EM world understand what happens in the EM world, and especially women, giving them that call and just venting. I just, made a call today and said, hey, this is the situation. I just 5 minutes just talked. I felt so much better. Yeah. So having that support, and you're right, sometimes family, they don't understand the terms that you use, what exactly the situation is. So having that diversified support system, not only of people within the industry, but people outside the industry that maybe you can, have that safe conversations with. And yoga, yes, I try to do yoga a couple of times a week. That's my savior right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you go, when you really got to let it out, then really let it out, right?
Yes.
Get it. Otherwise, you're going to feel like, I just wasted those 5 minutes. I didn't get relief, and they had to hear partial.
Yes.
Just go for it.
Chief Alec?
Same here. I won't hesitate to reach out, as you well know. And I'm grateful because it is a safe place. And I know what I share remains with you. Mm-hmm. And within the profession, I tend to lean poor Trisha, because she is in uniform as well. We can relate, but also lean on a couple of very good friends. Same thing, it happened organically with two ladies in public safety, Lisa Myers over in Howard County, chief of police there, and Cherie Briscoe out of Baltimore City, bureau chief there. We can bounce ideas off of one another. We can share experiences. We can vent. I miss them. We had just started meeting for lunch, and then the pandemic interrupted our ability to do that. I reach out to Chief Hyatt in Baltimore County. I reach out. I talk to Chief Velez in Prince George's County. I talk to Chief Jones in Montgomery County. I have, coming from Prince George's County and having a resource of municipal police chiefs on speed dial is helpful. I'll say that. But I can always trust that when I get with the young ladies, that we can have a very robust, substantive conversation, and we get things off of our chest.
Yeah. Well, I know that I've had different conversations with all of you, and they've been very helpful to vent, to solve problems, and just connect. So I do think having that support system that is outside your family, because family's great, and my husband understands a lot, but sometimes it's just, you just need to do that separately. So it's really great to know that you guys have that in your repertoire of friends and colleagues. So what would you recommend other women do who might have an interest in following your footsteps? We've talked about the grit and the hard work that it requires and prioritizing things. But what are some recommendations you might have for women who are looking up and going, one day I could be a director, or one day I could be chief? What are your thoughts?
Chief Wolfer started with, and I'm gonna take your comment and use it in a different context, begin with yes for ladies. Sometimes ladies need a little extra encouragement. And I think their framework should begin with yes, I can do that. Yes, I can accomplish that. But set goals for yourself. Seek professional development opportunities at every turn. Take the promotional exams. Get a mentor. Be a mentor. That's so important that you do both roles. Don't just receive, but give, because your blessings will be bountiful. And if I've learned nothing else, I've learned that not only am I a mentor, but I am also a mentee. And I will listen to folks who are younger than I, who have a lower rank than I, because every person brings a bit of experience, intellect, and sage advice to the conversation. So it's important to listen, to both mentors and mentees.
I think it's really important, as Chief Awa said, to give back. So I think especially in emergency management, we really have to do more outreach to the younger generation, especially females, on what emergency management is about and encourage them to get involved. So I'm going to put a plug in for Meade High School and Glen Burnie High School, who do have programs that are focused on Homeland Security and public service. And for us to really take that extra step and encourage the diversification in the industry starting young. And I think once we do that, it gives us a better footing to therefore encourage them to volunteer or to be more involved in the programs, to really show them what the industry is like.
Excellent.
For young women entering or looking to enter into any of the realms of public safety, I think we're doing all the things that we would want to have seen the women before us do, right? We're leading by example, we're present, we're visible, we're telling them they can. At some point it comes down to, is this the profession for you? And I think every profession can probably say that, am I good at math? Should I be an accountant? Do I feel like the medical field is a calling? Do I want to be a doctor? But there is certainly something different about what you see and what you do in a day of public safety, and being there for everyone's worst moment, including your own on some days. So there is definitely an inner quality that you kind of have to seek out and understand about yourself. For the women that are in the ranks and moving through, I think the best piece of advice is when you're in these, what I consider big jobs, right? Directors, you're running major departments, whether it's, leading a bureau and you're a deputy or you are the chief, everything about these positions is being true to yourself. We know you're qualified. We know you've done the work, right? Because if you're climbing the ladder, you're doing the work. You're getting into those promotional processes. You're getting promoted. You're moving up and you're an assistant director. But being true to yourself, because when you get in those director roles, it's about fit. And it's almost impossible to lead your division or your bureau without understanding who you are as a leader and what you're capable of. And a lot of the times I feel like for women, sometimes it's hard to get out of our way. And I say that in terms of, because you didn't get a promotion or because you didn't get the big job isn't always necessarily because you're a woman. Understanding yourself and that fit piece, that self-awareness piece to go, you know what? I probably could have studied harder and finished number 1 on the list instead of number 3. Maybe that's why I didn't get the job. For women moving in these professions that are difficult, the answer can't always be, well, I didn't because I'm a woman. I didn't because, that weight is meant for no one but ourselves, right? These are the things that we work on when we talk about opening up these categories for people of color, for women, for underrepresented. There's so many pieces that if we're not looking at ourselves and really being good representatives of these roles and being honest with ourselves of why we got them, I look at this screen, I listen to those bios, I see the work that we do. There's nothing about the fact that it is just because we are women. We are all qualified, we are all driven, we are all successful, we all produce. That's why we're successful in these roles. So if we allow younger women coming through to take that as scapegoat when they're really not ready, it goes back to what the police chief says. We need to be better mentors. We need to be better communicators with what this means to work in these roles. So sorry, it's a little bit of a long answer, but there's just so much to how and why we lead, and truly why I think we're so effective, why I really think women leaders are so highly effective.
I think that you really talked about 2 things that I think are important in government these days, accountability and producing. Government is really shifted, right? Like we're looking at outcomes. We want to be able to say that the work that we did had an impact, right? What is the impact? And I think that sometimes we don't talk about those types of things with staff and maybe don't really help them to see what the outcomes are in a way that prepares them for leadership roles. So I definitely think that we have to, continue those types of conversations and be mentored, be mentees, but also, do the other parts of it is to make sure that, we are supporting them and helping to create spaces for them. One thing I just want to say, I don't often get the time to brag on the county executive, but I will say that the county executive, being the only female in the executive team, creates a lot of space for me. And you wouldn't think that I need someone to do that for me. But I have a psychological background. So I'm the person who watches and, kind of just sees what's going on, looks at the dynamics. And it's been an incredible experience in working with him to when he makes sure that, hey, Kate, where are you with this? Because you're being awfully quiet. How do you feel? Do you feel comfortable? How can we do this differently? Do you have some different thoughts about it? And really not, kind of just dismissing. And that's super important for women who, that's not always the case. So I just kind of want to say kudos to my boss, our bosses, for doing that. Let's see, we've got another comment. So truly inspirational leadership, competence, compassion, and a vision for what Anne Arundel residents need. Thank you. And that's from Linda.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Linda.
Linda. Very nice.
Yes.
Yes. All right, so we have about 11 minutes left, and I want to, we've only got one question. We've got some really great comments, but only one question. And so I'm just going to throw it out there so we can have a laugh here. Chief Wolfer, this is for you. Who makes the best homemade meatballs you've ever tasted? And this is from, I'm going to probably say his name wrong. So Joe A., he's the president of the Professional Firefighters, Local 1563 in Anne Arundel.
Yes, we all call him Advil. He's one of our great firefighters serving as our union president, who I'm very grateful. I have a great working relationship with them. And not only does he make a mean meatball, but there's a cannoli that follows that is out of this world.
Wow.
Well, Joe, since you asked
Yes.
the question and all of us have never tasted that, we expect that at some point in the future when we're back together, that all of us will have the opportunity to taste these meatballs and cannolis.
Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Yeah.
Excellent. So since we just have a few more minutes, I wanted, instead of doing closing remarks where I was telling people something, I really wanted to, continue the conversation, to pick your brains. And what do you recommend that we in government and our listeners do to bring about greater gender equality or equity in local government leadership?
I think, especially speaking for the Office of Emergency Management, we always preach the whole community approach. And I think it's starting to dawn in emergency management that in order to do that, we have to look internally and make sure that we are representing the whole community, that we're looking at our plans, our mitigation, our response, our recovery through the lenses of the whole community approach. And that starts from inside. And I think that's something that Anne Arundel County government is definitely progressing towards. So I think it starts individually and what we can do within our own departments to help that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you guys respond, we have another question. So, and I want to make sure that we get questions in. So we'll come back to that. So, have you ever experienced negative reactions by the public or colleagues being a woman in our profession? And this is from Kathy. Who wants to take that one on?
Ooh, I'll start with that. Great question, Kathy. She sounds like a woman in leadership, probably.
I would say so.
I would say for the most part, any of the communities I've worked in, and by my bio, I've been in 2 other communities, welcomed with open arms. I will say there is, a misstep, a preconceived notion that a lot of times I get mistaken as the assistant because it's a female voice on the phone. And so they say, no, I'm looking for the fire chief. And I say, yes, you have me, I'm here, right? This is me of whatever version. And they say, no, not her, not his assistant. No, the fire chief is a she, right? So you have to kind of sometimes, go through those things. In other areas of the country, it was, the same thing, even as the city fire marshal or the deputy chief, almost that disbelief of like, no, wait, what do you mean? Wait, you're the chief? Normally it comes with a lot of, admiration and, oh, that's amazing. And that's great. And that's always wonderful to hear and see, but you have to stumble through some of those. And I think any profession, but public safety, it's more focused because it tends to be male dominated. But I think any profession has that. If you're not in what society previously has thought of a normal role for women, but that tends to be majority of the slip ups, which my assistant's amazing. So I'm honored that people think I'm her and I'm that organized. So
I love how you flip that on its head. That's great. We've got a couple other questions. Has the pandemic given you new insights on how your agencies are organized? This is from Karen.
I think for the Office of Emergency Management, and I know I've said this before, but being more forward facing and what the community needs. And these ladies are wonderful to work with public safety. I think OEM has been focused so much on public safety in the past that there are new areas that disaster affects, and we need to focus more on those areas. So that has really led to us in revamping our initiatives, our objectives, and what we plan to do in the next couple of years.
I think there was a redundancy factor too. If anything, organizational flow tends to be pretty good in public safety, but it did start to expose if you have single role individuals, right? Only this person knows this IT thing. Only this person knows this thing. Well, that person is now working from home and we don't have them set up yet, or this person is out with COVID. So it did start to expose kind of those backups of systems and people and how much we rely on them, and we shouldn't, right? We should be implementing different processes.
Right. Yeah. Cross training became really important in our office. Chief Alwood, do you have any thoughts on this?
Obviously, I came in the middle. I wasn't here at the onset, but I think for public safety, since we're public facing and we're service oriented in the field, I mean, there really was not much adjustment because we continued to operate as if there was no pandemic. The only thing I noticed operationally, was at the onset where we weren't prepared for a pandemic. And so it was challenging somewhat early on with just making sure all of our officers had the equipment that they needed, and then developing safety protocols to help them not only stay safe while they're working, but to also protect the folks that they're having contact with. And then also making sure that, they're not taking anything home to their family. So we had to make adjustments organizationally or operationally, nothing that was too far away from what we were already doing.
Excellent. So we have time for one more quick question. What can business leaders and community members do to assist each department in its mission? And this is from Rodell again.
Continue to do what they've been very supportive throughout the pandemic. And I think post-pandemic, the relationships will flourish even more so. In terms of resources, I mean, I think all of us have what we need. What we really need most is just to build on our relationships, just develop those relationships, because we've kind of been disconnected from one another during this pandemic. So when it's safe, I know we're looking forward to getting back to what we know and what we do, and that's that community engagement.
Right.
I would definitely agree with that. We're very much looking forward to getting out into the community and having that two-way street of communication and learning from each other.
I would say the patience, again, for my folks when they're in the field, the extra time it takes for them to put all of their PPE on, to be doing the right procedural things to keep everyone safe. I feel like sometimes, we try to communicate that understanding, but, that patience to understand, in order to keep the community safe, we have to keep ourselves safe so we can keep operating. And when it comes to business owners and people we're engaging with, honestly, the greatest thing right now is just to see a happy, smiling face. It's to know that when you're approaching and getting ready to do something, an in-service fire inspection to make sure that their fire extinguishers work in their place of business because maybe nobody's been in there for 6 months, or, when it's a service call to check on something, just kindness right now. Kindness, it goes so far. It makes your day so much better. And for those firefighters, it's just comforting to know that when they open the door to go in, somebody's going to go, "Hi, thanks for coming. We're so happy to see you." A smile. It's really quite easy at this point. We've all turned into such simple creatures that it goes a long way.
I think that that's a really great point. And I just want to extend that a little bit further and kind of build on just the emergency that we're still operating in. disasters, you usually kind of go into the disaster mode and you prioritize what you're going to do. And one of the things that we learned early on is that you can't prioritize government. You got to run government. People still have to do the regular jobs. And so government has been responding to an emergency while also keeping those regular operations going. So I think that's a really good point. Patience and kindness and understanding is super important. So it is 7 o'clock, and I want to, I'm going to close us out unless you all have some last minute statements that you want to say. This has been a great time, but I do have one last comment that I need to close with. So I'll open it up. Is there anything that you all want to add tonight? It's been a great time.
I just want to say thank you for having us. It's been great, ladies, having this hour to talk about really important issues. So thank you.
I was going to extend gratitude to you, Dr. K, for facilitating this thing, and just thank you in your position, in your role, and the relationship that we enjoy with you. Your guidance, so much appreciated. And for any ladies out there questioning themselves, why me? We pose the challenge to you. Why not you?
Yes. Excellent. I love that. Chief Wolfer, did you have any closing things?
Oh, I think nothing better than what the police chief just said, right? Why not you? Absolutely. We all thought that at one point. We thought, well, what if? Can I? Should I? And here we all are, because we said, you know what? Yes, me. I'm going to do that too. I'm going to think about me, and I can do this.
And remember that even if you get it one time, it's okay, because these ladies remind me of it often too. You can do this. You got it.
Yes.
So we all struggle with it. So I just want to thank our viewers for sharing this time with us tonight and really talking about history in the making. And thank you all. Mr. Pittman made a comment that I want to close with, and he said, I don't have a question, but I want to thank all four of you for demonstrating that we made the right hiring decisions. Each of you were hired because you were the very best applicants who applied. Thank you for helping to make Anne Arundel County the best place for all. Stuart Pittman.
Thank you.
So can't top that. Thank you, boss. Thank you, ladies.
Thank
you.
Have a good evening. And to the community, thank you for joining us. Have a great evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.